A woman alone, walking the corridors of power in Tudor England, openly defying the orthodoxy of the state religion. Was it bravery or treason? Anne Askew, known as such in court records, was not a noblewoman by title, yet she became one of the most infamous figures executed under King Henry VIII. Born in 1521 to Sir William Askew, a Lincolnshire landowner loyal to the crown, and was educated, a rarity for women of her time. But education, in her case, was not a passive virtue. It was a weapon. In an era when the line between religious reform and heresy was razor-thin, and openly embraced Protestantism, specifically the rejection of transubstantiation, the Catholic belief that the Eucharistic bread and wine became the literal body and blood of Christ. To question it was, under the 1539 Act of 6 Articles, a capital offense. Her words were uncompromising. "I would rather read 5 lines in the Bible than hear 5 masses in the church," she declared during her examination. Those were not careless provocations. They were deliberate challenges to the heart of Tudor religious policy. By 1545, her preaching in London, public, articulate, and dangerously persuasive, had drawn the attention of Bishop Stephen Gardiner and Chancellor Thomas Wriothesley. These men, known as fierce defenders of Catholic doctrine in Henry's deeply unstable religious settlement, viewed Anne not as a misguided subject, but as a subversive threat. She was not merely spreading heresy. She was undermining the monarchy's claim as the supreme head of the Church of England. To complicate matters, Anne's questioning of doctrine coincided with political tensions at court, particularly suspicions surrounding Queen Catherine Parr, herself known for evangelical sympathies, and was arrested, interrogated, and released once. But they came for her again. This time she would not walk free. In the words of John Bale, a Protestant contemporary, Anne was a virgin not only pure and undefiled in body, but also a pure virgin in the faith of Christ. That purity of conviction would soon bring her face to face with the most feared torture device in England, the rack. The rack, and Askew's brutal interrogation. Beneath the stone chambers of the Tower of London, Anne Askew was dragged into a world from which few ever returned whole. What followed was an act of state violence so extreme. It shocked even Tudor England, a land already hardened by fire, gallows, and blade, and had already been tried and condemned for heresy. That should have been the end. But her silence about others, especially the women at court suspected of sharing her Protestant beliefs, left her inquisitors unsatisfied. Chancellor Thomas Wriothesley and Sir Richard Rich, acting under the sanction of the Privy Council, took an unprecedented step. They personally oversaw the torture of a condemned woman, an act not just legally dubious, but extraordinary even by the standards of Henry VIII's regime. The rack, known as such in legal records, was designed to painfully stretch the body to the point of severe joint damage. It was rarely used on women, and never with such direct political intent. And, bound by wrists and ankles, was stretched until her shoulders and hips were violently dislocated. According to her own account, recorded by chronicler John Bale, "They did put me on the rack, because I confessed no ladies or gentlewomen to be of my opinion." She described Wriothesley and Rich turning the wheel with their own hands, until the strength in my arms and legs was completely destroyed. But even in this agony, she gave them nothing. Torture, though technically illegal under English common law without royal consent, had become a shadow instrument of Tudor authority, justified through a royal warrant or more often, simply by political necessity. And Askew's case blurred the already thin line between judicial process and outright persecution. She was not tortured for information about herself. She was tortured to implicate others, perhaps even Queen Catherine Parr. Yet Anne's resolve did not break. "I had rather to die," she wrote later, "than to break my faith." Her defiance made her more than a heretic. She became a symbol unshaken, even when her body was irreparably destroyed. When they were finished, she was so badly mutilated that she could no longer walk. She was carried, broken, bound, and barely alive, back to her cell. And still, the court demanded her execution. Her interrogators hoped the rack would make her compliant. Instead, it immortalized her. The cruelty inflicted on her body only deepened the power of her conviction. Torture had failed, and all that remained was the final spectacle, the public execution that would attempt one last time to silence her voice. Public spectacle, the Smithfield burning. She could no longer walk. Unable to walk, her body weakened by prior torture, Anne Askew was carried to the stake in a chair, her body wrecked by the rack, her will unshaken. It was July 16th, in 1546, and the place was Smithfield, London, known historically as a site of executions, especially for heretics. Here, beneath the eyes of nobles, clergy, and commoners alike, England performed its darkest rituals. But this time was different. Anne Askew was not alone. 3 other condemned men, John Lascelles, John Hadlam, and John Hadlam, shared her fate that day. Yet it was and who drew the crowd's gaze. She was the first Englishwoman known to be both tortured in the Tower and then burned at the stake. The sheer brutality of her treatment had already circulated in hushed tones across the capital. And now, the culmination, public, deliberate, and irreversible, was about to unfold. She was tied to the stake with chains, her broken frame too frail to stand. Records indicate that a small seat or support was constructed to keep her upright. Beneath her, the executioners stacked bundles of dry wood, faggots, as they were known, seasoned for maximum flame. Eyewitness accounts describe her demeanor as calm, even composed. She reportedly refused a final recantation. Bishop Nicholas Shaxton, formerly a Protestant who had returned to Catholic doctrine, was appointed to preach at the burning. But Anne ignored him entirely. Bale records that she remained silent during his sermon, lips unmoving. Her refusal to engage became, in itself, a final act of defiance. A bag of gunpowder was tied around her neck, a common practice to hasten death and reduce suffering by detonating during the flames. As the fire was kindled, the crowd looked on. We must remember, in Tudor England, burnings were not hidden acts. They were public, performative, and designed to terrify. Her weakened body became the focus of a grim public execution meant to purge England of heresy. But rather than silence her, the flames ignited a legacy. Anne Askew died without confession, without betrayal, and without fear. Her writings, preserved in the examinations of Anne Askew, circulated widely among Protestant reformers. John Fox later included her story in his Acts and Monuments, stating she was burned for the testimony of Jesus. The message was clear: the state could destroy the body, but it could not claim the soul. Her agony became an accusation of England's harsh religious policy, a policy so cruel that it turned a young woman into a martyr before the eyes of the realm. At Smithfield, Anne Askew's suffering ended in the flames. But from its ashes rose one of the most powerful testaments of the English Reformation. The torture and execution of Anne Askew stands as a serious testament to the peril faced by those who dared question power in Tudor England. Her agony was not just a personal tragedy but a stark revelation of the era's ruthless struggle over conscience and belief, an ordeal that exposed both the harshness of authority and the resilience of conviction. How do such moments of state-sanctioned violence continue to echo through our ideas of justice and faith today? Comment below. As Anne herself wrote, "I would rather to die than to break my faith."